Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for coming back. Thanks for being such great networkers. It's hard. It's really hard to stop networking, I think. I know, I'm with you. Okay, but we've got more. And we want to keep rolling. We're going to hear more insights, more great inspiration, more innovations, starting with our friend and frequent stage visitor, Esteban Kelly, board chair of NCBA CLUSA and executive director of the U.S. Federation of Worker Co-ops.
Thank you, Casey. I absolutely need to address the elephant in the room. Why am I on stage so much? Our director of policy and advocacy is home with COVID. So that is why I'm here, filling in. 3 days back from sabbatical without much context of what is going on. But I can tell you about the state of the co-op sector. What we're doing in a moment is going to be an interactive thing. There are 3 facilitators who I'll introduce in a moment, and we're going to get into it. What I was asked to do is to offer a little bit of higher level framing context so that we can dig in to this question of innovation in worker cooperatives, I believe is the title of this session. So I'm going to do that. I will start by advancing to the next slide if this works. What do I point at? There we go. Okay, so that's really the first one? Yeah, I guess so. All right, cool. So innovation, who is it impacting? Who is taking on the model? What is this? We actually do a census. I believe Ana Martina mentioned this every other year. There we go. We do our own census every other year of worker cooperatives in the U.S. We get a pretty decent response rate, but it's far from comprehensive, of course. We just closed that survey about 2 months ago, and so we're midway through crunching the numbers. So the data we have now is 2 years old from our last census. But what it reflects is that we have a large amount of racial diversity and kind of a surprising labor statistic in terms of gender, which is that worker co-ops are a majority of the workforce are women as opposed to men. I think it's more than 2% people who identify as non-binary. It'd be really interesting to see how that data is changing in 2023 in the most recent survey that just went out. But in terms of race, we have pretty much are on par with all of the US racial statistics, with the exception of white and Latino or Latinx workers, where instead of, so for example, about 14% of the US population are Black or African American, and that's also true for worker owners. And that's also true for indigenous people, for Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, et cetera. So it's just when you get down to white people who are about 40% of worker owners, and 40-something% for Latinx workers. It kind of, the data has skewed because of COVID. There were a lot of layoffs, especially felt among immigrant workers and people in the healthcare industry and some of the domestic work industry. So the numbers are a little bit wobbly there. But put together, we're looking at about 2/3 of worker owners, or 60-something% of worker owners are people of color. And it's gone anywhere from being a majority of about 55% up to as high as 68% women on the the gender side. In terms of formation, this stuff to me is pretty interesting. I wish I could take this mic right in front so I could see without looking over my shoulder. Okay, so in terms of the formation, and this is a frequent question that we get, obviously a lot of energy is going into the conversions strategy. And there's an acceleration from the groups who are incubating cooperatives, either in community-based organizations, nonprofits, partnerships, CDFIs. Some of you are in the room, so you're familiar with that. But we still see that the vast majority, this number is 70%. I'm really curious to see how much that's changed in the last couple of years, that are started by just as startups, by founders, by entrepreneurs, which I had flagged in the last session, is a limitation to scale at a certain point, but also a testament to our phones ringing off the hook. I'm sure that happens for you as well. A lot of people who are like, I have this idea, this is my passion project, or it's my group, and we need all the help in the world. We are not coming in with professional experience on setting up our accounting systems, or knowing where to get financing, or knowing how to make decisions. So that's where a lot of the energy goes, and thank you to everyone who participates in the technical assistance for the 70% of worker cooperatives that are started every year that need that kind of support. It says 18% as developer-assisted startups, so that could be incubation, some of the community-based organizations. And then in terms of conversions, the transfer of ownership from an established traditional business, it has been around 12%. That actually has been growing, so at least that trend line's moving in the right direction given the amount of policy changes, the amount of effort that's going into supporting the conversions strategy. And then many of you do already know this, but a lot of the industries that are most common are in the care sector or the service sector, home health care, child care, a lot of business services, whether that's bookkeeping, consulting, like facilitation, like what my co-op does, and marketing, even some of the tech can get into that space. So doing web design, those are things that aid other businesses, right, ultimately. What is in the bottom? Oh yeah, retail, of course. You all get to support, patronize, shop at worker cooperatives. Happy to see that Equal Exchange is here today. We were hiking the hill and passing out chocolate to all of the members of Congress, which was very fun. And then, of course, the ratio, all of that stuff are things that you're familiar with in terms of the general level of parity that we have between the highest and lowest paid workers. Lastly, on trends, there is a upsurge around the union co-ops strategy. The Worker Co-op Federation has a union co-ops council. I think actually some people who are part of that are here. I've seen you floating around, and it's been actually increasing in the attention to that. We're going to be getting together in a couple weeks at the Union Co-op Symposium in Cincinnati. So shout out to Co-op Cincy friends who are here. But generally speaking, you know, there is this conversation about, well, what even is a union co-op? And essentially, we actually defined this a dozen years ago, and now there's been so much innovation in the field that people are reopening that question. If it can be other kinds of cooperatives, consumer cooperatives that might have, no. For us, at least, until we update this within our membership and our governance process, the definition of a union co-op is a worker co-op that is unionized. So there's a lot of interest in doing case studies on some of these businesses, in partnering with unions to be the incubator or to spin off worker cooperatives, to learn more about cooperatives. The more that unions understand about cooperatives, the better partner they can be to taking organized workplaces or taking some of their, I think, actually pretty substantive funds and investing them in cooperative development in partnership with everyone else. So we've got toolkits doing that. We have this grassroots council that works on that. There's case studies about that. We have cooperative members who show up at labor events, including the Labor Notes Conference and things like that. So interesting stuff to watch there, just given the rise. And I think there's also this dovetailing. Casey and I were going to talk about this, but we ran out of time, around some of the industry trends that we're seeing. So when you look at healthcare, for example, and especially home healthcare, the partnership with SCIU, which is also the largest union co-op and the largest worker co-op in the US, they've got a little over 2,000 workers there, of whom about 800 of them are worker owners. that they're also looking at expanding and working through SEIU, going to the state of Washington, creating hundreds of union jobs, of which some of them are hoped to become worker co-op jobs as well. So that there is this potential through strong partnerships and leaning into industry trends like that. And I know that there's a pretty substantive delegation from Washington State. Congratulations to those people who just got the best worker co-op statute in the country enacted just a few months ago. Okay, so lastly, emerging trends. Just to shout out, there obviously platform cooperatives are a big piece of this. Groups like the Drivers Co-op, for example, or last year I was here talking about a freelancer co-op that we started called Gilded. Multi-stakeholder cooperatives and mixed models. Casey and I just talked about this right before the break. And then labor unions and union co-op strategy. So I unpacked that. I only really had time to unpack that one example. So yes, there's, of course, in terms of trends, legislative wins all over the place. Here in DC, we mostly focus on the federal stories about federal legislation that's passed or regulatory things, but there's a ton happening at the local level, whether that's at the state level. I just mentioned what happened in Washington State, things that are happening in Massachusetts, the federal win of Senator Sanders' Work Act that's gonna fund state-level employee ownership centers to the tune of $50 million, I believe, that's going toward that, starting kind of next year. The money doesn't go till 2025. But those sort of things, I think it lends itself to an infrastructure and the capacity to really do a lot more development on the ground. So there's a ton of stuff happening also at the local municipal level. So those are things to pay attention to, places like Chicago, parts of the South even. And of course, New England has always been doing a lot of work there at the local level. So those are some of the trends that are happening. I'm gonna leave this slide up for just maybe reference for the activity that we're about to do, looking at some of the different elements, partnerships that we see as helpful for developing a worker cooperative ecosystem, if you're looking at the different elements that are needed there. So I'll leave this in the background and invite Courtney, there you are, Courtney, Adam Trott, and JT there we go, to guide us through the next part of this workshop that you all planned with my coworker. Hooray!
All right, everyone. Is my mic on? Yep, thank you. So we're supposed to co-do this.
Oh, we're co-doing.
We were
So
going to ask
excited
for a
about
spot
this.
up here like the old men Muppets, like a little, but we'll have to do
Does your
that.
face hurt? Because it's killing me.
They turned down
look
our
wonderful.
request. So the rest of our time together until 11:30 a.m. is going to be working in regional groups. So this was framed up as a conversation about worker cooperatives. It is that. The overarching theme is P6, regional cooperation. How do we have conversations that lead to actionable items when we go back into our region? So I'm not going to stay in your seats, but we are going to ask you to get up in a moment and move to the region where you live and work. I know that many of us work for organizations now that are not where we live, but if you have that choice, go where you live, so the community in which you live. And we're going to have you move east. East is over here. Southeast. Midwest has taken over the whole middle of the room. Flyover country's big, folks. So the Midwest is here, and then West is on that side. And every table has a set of questions, a worksheet, and you're going to have we're not going to report out at the end, but we are going to ask that someone scribe at your table responses to these questions and your conversation, and then take a picture and upload it to Whova so that NCBA can capture your beautiful discussions. Am I missing anything, Adam?
No, so just please find your tables. We'll come by and assist you with this exercise. We're really excited to support this.
Yes, Adam will be on the eastern side, I'll be in the center, and JT
on the
will
west.
be on that side. So go. Is that okay?
You are